5 weeks. Is that 5 weeks after conception is the point?
Can you announce where you're from in your name?
Sure, Jim Province with the Toledo Blade. Is that 5 weeks after conception that we would first hear the heartbeat potentially?
That would be correct, and I think probably depending on the pregnancy that may vary a little bit, Doctor. And Doctor, I don't know if you would care to elaborate on that.
5 weeks from conception, you could detect a heartbeat with an ultrasound, with a transvaginal ultrasound.
Doctor,
it would be visible.
Could you give me an idea of how soon does a woman typically learn that she's pregnant? Is it possible she could be beyond that point before she knows that she's pregnant?
That would be possible. I mean, every once in a while, a woman comes in at full term and doesn't recognize that she's pregnant.
How can you put a number on it?
Usually,
how soon do they know?
The usual mother would know when she misses her cycle, which would be about 4 weeks after the last cycle, so it'd be 2 weeks after conception.
Shane Stegmiller with Canada News Service. How would you enforce this? What are the enforcement mechanisms? Are they required to do an ultrasound before a procedure is performed, or how would it be enforced?
Well, there's a number. Janet, why don't you come on up, because I'm going to need some help with this. But you know, I think enforcement is one of the challenging parts of it. Certainly, reporting, requirement of use of certain technology may be a part. But I think some of the enforcement part of this bill, to me, is probably one of the most important parts we're going to have to hash out in the committee process too, to make sure we get that part of the bill right.
The other component, and we're sorry I don't have a copy for you of this bill because it's just now coming out of LSC. It'll be dropped, of course, next week during Valentine's Day. You kind of get the connection. But the Ohio Department of Health will be given the authority to put together some of the regulations and information to be made available to doctors. But it's essentially, and this is one of the things where we've had a debate about enforcement versus being upheld in the courts. Right now, the bill says essentially that if the heartbeat is detected, then the baby is protected. However, if the heartbeat is not detected, and by the way, it's used standard medical practices. In other words, what you just saw today. They're not listening from down the hall and say, I didn't hear anything. Standard medical practices are what we use to determine whether that heartbeat can be heard. But right now, if that heartbeat is not heard, that abortion can still go forward, unfortunately. And that's part of the bill that doesn't put any undue burden on a physician in Ohio at all.
Yeah, I think this question brings up a very interesting point. And again, I'm not the doctor, but I have chaired health committee for a long time. You know, there are protocols in medicine for almost everything that a doctor and others should and shouldn't do for different diseases and pregnancies and everything else. So to some degree, I think what we're going to end up doing is saying that all people who deal with a potential unborn baby are going to have to follow medical protocol, and some of that may be enhanced by this legislation because clearly, at least I do not want to leave up to discretion of certain doctors and others who clearly are there to perform abortions and take the life of the unborn. We don't want to leave the discretion of the protocol up to that type of person.
As a follow-up, though, what's to stop the doctor, though, from just going, well, you know, I didn't hear the heartbeat, even though, you know, they maybe not have done everything that they probably could have or should have done. How do you enforce?
Again, you know, in this great land of ours, if people choose to break the law or choose to ignore the law, we're going to be challenged in those areas. I recognize that the enforcement of this and a follow-up, and again, to reiterate, the reason we have committees is to have thorough hearings and work through some of these difficult issues and deal with them the best we can. But you know, if we have doctors who are sworn to a creed and choose to not follow laws of the land, this great nation will continue to crumble, because when law-abiding citizens choose to become non-law-abiding citizens, our society does crumble. I mean, our prisons are full of people who, you know, have chosen not to do that. And I'm not saying we're going to send them to prison, because again, we've got to work through this issue. But to some extent, if our nation is going to choose to be a non-law-abiding citizen, we're going to lose all of our freedoms. Yes.
Several of the, Bill Hershey, Dayton Daily News, several of the speakers referred to the courts. Do you anticipate that this would be challenged immediately if the governor signed it? And do you anticipate it as a vehicle to, in effect, do what Roe v. Wade did for forbidding abortions, that this would have the opposite effect and be a potential landmark case?
Yes and yes would be the very brief. Yeah, absolutely.
Karen Kassler, Ohio Public Radio. What number are you going with? Are you going with the 5-week mark? I've heard some people say that the fetal heartbeat is better detected in 10 weeks. Is there a number that's actually attached in this?
No, it will be the detection of the heartbeat. And that's what I spoke to earlier. I mean, one of the things I love about this legislation is that as technology improves to some degree, the heartbeat will be detected at an earlier and earlier stage. So it is potentially at least a moving target.
So is it going to specify in the bill if it's going to be detected by an ultrasound, detected by the kind of machine that the doctors use, by a stethoscope?
It will have standard medical language that, again, will be flexible enough, at least from my standpoint. What I want is, as this technology I spoke of earlier, because I'm sure 5 years from now there will be technology available that can detect something that's not detectable today in the way of heartbeat. At least I would be surprised if there's not. The goal of the committee process would make sure that we have maximum flexibility, so as new things are developed, maybe new techniques, etc., and that heartbeat might be detected earlier than today, that could take place. Yes.
Rachel Butch, Gongward News Service. What would the penalty be for those who violate this?
It's you'll see when the bill comes out that it's a felony, and I'm not sure what degree. I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a wannabe. But in the same way that the question that said, what if they break the law? Well, people could, arguably you could bury someone with a beating heart. It would be a violation of the law. So I imagine that at the least these doctors will no longer have a medical license to begin with. But it is a felony.
And that's against the doctor?
Not the woman, the doctor, yes.
Yeah, and again, the committee process, we may decide or not decide that the loss of a medical license may be the penalty. Again, I don't want to undermine the severity of what some of us believe happens when a baby's aborted, but another area that the committee process will have a lot of work to do on. Yes?
Are there any protections in here for a woman's, if the woman's health is in danger? Any exceptions, any health exceptions?
Well, one of the neat things about this bill, for instance, people bring up rape. What about rape? An exception for rape and things like that. If a woman goes through that tragedy, she certainly will know it happened, and there will be an opportunity of time for her to seek, avenues available to her up to the heartbeat to terminate or do other things potentially. So I think that's part of the uniqueness of this bill. To a large degree, to me, it overcomes a lot of those debates that we've had in many pro-life pieces of legislation about rape and incest and things like that.
Just a little add-on note, there is a medical emergency exception also in the bill.
Would the bill address unintentional abortions, treating a woman for another injury that ends up leading to an abortion, but the doctor finds out after the fact that the woman was pregnant and it did not do the required testing?
Sure. I'll just jump in. Essentially, it also has exemptions if it doesn't aim at anything that is contraceptive, whose goal is contraceptive in nature, or anything unintentional. So this is the intentional taking of a life of a baby with a beating heart. That's what this bill is aimed at. It's very simple, really. That's all this bill is aimed at.
You have several former members of Ohio Right to Life here, but does Ohio Right to Life support this bill?
I will let them speak for themselves. I've been meeting with Right to Life about quite a number of pieces of legislation, of which some of them they're promoting, others they're not. So what I've encouraged them and all of us who consider ourselves pro-lifers is that we would work together to pass, I think, what will end up being a host of pieces of legislation out of the House on the pro-life side. So the Ohio Right to Life at this time, to my understanding, is not in support of this bill.
However, there are many current right-to-life people who are, you can see the balloons around you, but Lori Viars, who you heard from a moment ago, is current Vice President of Warren County Right to Life. The Executive Director of Cincinnati Right to Life, Paula Westwood, on board with the bill. Clark County Right to Life, her name is Pat Banasak, very well known, who is on board with this issue. And so we're seeing pro-lifers from around the country, not just around the state, and it's the grassroots movement, as you can tell. And we're hoping that when we see children protected again, that all pro-lifers will understand the importance and the significance, and that we don't need to not try something just because we might get a no initially, because we've seen that before, only to see it reversed.
Let me speak just very upfront. Look, there's some concern among some that the passage of this bill in the law could cause other statutes in place or future statutes in place to be struck down. You know, part of the committee process will be to make sure that is not an end result of this, that we do not, as an end result of this legislation, go backwards, that we go forward. So I want to be very candid. There is that discussion that's taken place among right-to-lifers about concerns, and you know, again, we need to make sure that the lawyers in the room, ladies and gentlemen who know this stuff inside and out, and one of the great things about the legislative process, as some of you know, we generally have access to some of the greatest minds on all the issues that we care to bring up, which is something I've always been thankful for. But we always have the best minds available to come in and help give us the best input on issues, and I think that's worth noting that certainly this issue, it's kind of a pretty song, whatever that was, will be no different.
One other just little side note is that there is a provision in the bill that specifically states that it will not affect any other law that is in place. So there is no way that this bill can be interpreted to strike down any law that is protective in nature, whether it's parental consent or right to know or any other law that's on the books. And by the way, just one other thing is if the courts say no, and this is the big argument, if they say no, here's the thing, we've lost nothing. Because right now, children in Ohio are completely vulnerable at every point in pregnancy. So if we get a no, we are basically in the same place where we are now. The time is, and after 38 years, as Lynn has pointed out, 38 years and 52 million dead. We're just not going to wait any longer. That baby step approach, if we try for 38 more years, I don't want to see 100 million dead. We're going to step out, and we're going to ask the courts to do what they need to do. And if they don't tell us yes, there'll be many, many, many states behind us who will pound on that door to see it opened.
Janet, you said before that the legislation is going to be dropped next week, but can you tell us by the end of today what the level of felony is?
Yeah, I have it in my, I have to make, what's the lowest level of felony?
5.
It's 5 or 6 level felony. I believe it's one of the lower levels of felony, but it is a felony.
5 and 6.
I think it's 5. Is it 5?
5th degree felony?
I believe it is. I believe it is, and if you call me, I'll give you my cell phone. I'll verify that and get it to you.
Any more questions? Again, thank you all very, very much for being here today. And